Welcome to Real Talk. I am Brian Rose, and we're here at London Real Studios. And for the next 30 minutes, we'll be answering your questions live. Joining me tonight is Mr. Mike Zaremba, one of the co-founders of Vancouver Real, who's here with his brother Andy, celebrating their 100th episode of Vancouver Real. Holla! And they flew to London so we can do it in the studio. We'll be streaming live tomorrow at 5 p.m. GMT, so be here for that. They're also the co-founders of Float House in Vancouver. I want to hear all about that. Mike, welcome to London Real.
Brian, thank you so much, man. This is such a thrill for us. This is awesome.
Dude, it's awesome having you here. And like the more and more I hear you talking, I mean, you're like one of the earliest adopters of London Real that I even think I know. You watched the first episode we had, which is crazy. Yeah. You heard me on Rogan talking about other people should do their reels. You guys started floating, I think, on the back of what you heard from Rogan. You guys started Vancouver Real, and now you're here.
Yeah, dude, it's a trip. Like the whole thing is, I don't know, it feels like a dream. And now sitting here in this studio that I've seen so many times online, every episode, hearing your voice in my earbuds, like it's awesome, man. So thank you so much for helping us make this 100th episode super special. I can't wait.
Dude, it's my pleasure, and honestly, you and Andy are just killing it. And you guys have really from the get-go, and I remember looking in and watching the studio you guys had the headsets, you know, you had that. I remember it was on the ground floor, people were walking by. Yeah. And like, honestly, you guys were, to use a phrase, you were pissing excellence from day one, you know? And and that's amazing because a lot of people don't, and I would even say London Real didn't in the beginning. You know, it was pushed together. We were splitting the screens, and you know, you guys were always bringing like your A game, and I was really impressed by that. And so, you know, when I did my TED Talk, like I think one of your logos was like right up there because I was so proud of what you guys did, you know, from the get-go. So, you know, props to you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for that. I mean, like you said before, you know, with that first episode that we did, we literally just threw that together the night before. We had a guy in town that we wanted to have as our first guest who was one of the early guys in the float industry at that time. And so when we brought him on, we were exhausted because we had just opened our second location the day before. So it was thrown together. But we wanted to do Vancouver Real at least like a shadow, or we wanted to make the Real brand proud. You know, that was from the get-go. And so I think at that time there's maybe a handful of reels out there. Yeah. And we bought the domain maybe a week or so after you announced that on Rogan. When you were first on Rogan's podcast, we went and bought that domain and we sat on it just waiting for our time to step into that because we were starting Float House. And that took a lot of energy to get going. But about a year after that, we expanded and we designed a space in our float center to have the Vancouver Real studio. So that's what you saw there. Okay. And then it grew from there, actually. We actually reinvested, built out the formal studio with walls and did the sound deadening properties, better mics, better cameras. And, you know, because we saw what you were doing. We saw that you would invest in what you were doing before I started making any type of revenue, you know, and like you just kept doing it because it was just passion. And we tapped into that, man. Like full on, we tapped into that passion. And then we got hooked. You know, it became so much fun. Yeah. Like I loved it. You get to sit down with cool people all the time, learn things, ask questions, produce amazing content, get these listeners and have interactions with them. It's been a game changer, man, in a lot of ways for both of us. So I mean, and now looking back, like I was saying before, you gotta like appreciate where you've gone and where you've come from and the journey, you know, it is all about the journey. And so looking back on it now and sitting in front of you right now, it's giving me some goosebumps.
You know, you're reminding me of my journey in my like first 100 episodes, you know, cool. And you know, I just kept doing it because I was becoming a better person. It was just that's the very core. That's why I kept doing it, because I'm like, I like Brian Rose much more now than I did 3 months ago. And that hadn't always happened in my life. And so it was consistently delivering. Now, my other KPIs were not, you know, this show wasn't making money. I was burning money. It was not a business. Everyone thought I was insane. But that one KPI of I feel like I'm a better person, it trumped everything else. Right. So I always say, like, every year I would look myself in the mirror at like New Year's Eve and be like, are we actually going to do this another year? And I remember I was in New York City, I think in year 2, going on to year 3. And I was like, am I actually going to do this for another year where I have no idea if this is going to go anywhere? And I was just like, yes.
Right. So it was after year 2 that's when you kind of like, it seemed like you had this like, I don't know, dark night of the soul kind of thing. Like it's like it came to this point where you questioned yourself, and then you said, no, I'm going to keep going. And then, like I was kind of saying before, there's this turning point that I saw from our perspective as a viewer of London Real, where you shifted into another gear, and that's when the show, from my perspective, just, it was always going strong, but it just, I don't know, the trajectory changed. And there's something there that I think just, it shows with everything you got going on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it was me getting comfortable with being in front of the camera.
Right.
I know you said when I turned the tables on myself, I think my first one was when Sully Breaks interviewed me.
Correct, yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to talk about some darkness about me and where I used to be. And before that, if you see those early London Real episodes, it's like not about me at all.
Right.
So like with Dorian Yates, the first episode, which we've been watching lately because of the movie,
right.
It's like I'm really about the guest. And
right.
I still am, but I got a little more comfortable talking about me, and I think that opened me up a little.
Yeah, and can I ask you, what do you think that did for the show by bringing yourself more into it that way? How did you feel it changed the show?
I think people wanted to know who I was, but I think it was also good that they had to wait.
Right.
Because we all know those shows where the host just dominates the show and it's about them and it's a vehicle for them.
Right.
And so I think people, that works for some shows, but for some people they get tired of that. Mm-hmm. So maybe they felt like they had to kind of get to know me, like a little bit by a little bit, a comment here, a comment there. But I was doing so many things. I was doing some plant teacher ceremonies along the way, which I know you've done as well. And so I was opening up. Now I'm on the show every week, which is really an hour-long therapy session for me, as you guys know. Sometimes you're opening up to people, you're opening up to ideas. Then you've got subscribers, fans, followers, whatever, reelers coming up to you. And I know you guys get people coming up to you all the time saying, man, that episode with Gabor Mate changed my life. And you're like, yeah, it changed my life too. And all that stuff starts to accumulate and I think make you evolve as a person.
Yeah, and that's where I feel personally, where I'm at with our show as well, is like, I feel it's time to step into that. It's been about 2 years now, 100 episodes in, and we've had amazing guests, and we've always focused it on the guests. We want to highlight them. We want to show what this amazing person in Vancouver is doing, or from out of town who's in Vancouver is doing, and what they're doing in our city, and really showcase that. And so my challenge to myself is to try to turn this and step into that a little bit. Andy's been kind of encouraging me to do that. He's like, come on, we can do this. And I've been resisting it, and I think there's just something there that maybe is blocking me, but I'm just feeling it more and more now. I think coming here for me to see this is definitely going to catalyze that process for me a little bit.
Well,
more.
look, I had those feelings too. I was running away from a heavily capitalistic world that got me down a path that, look, I have no regrets of anything I did in my life, and it was all got me here. But I was going down a path where, that whole selfish mindset and the piling up of capital got me where I was like, I don't want to go back there.
Right.
But what I found with London Real is that if you can actually, capital can be looked at in many ways. Like if you have capital, you have the trust of your people. You have a show that's worthy enough of getting whoever you want on the show. Maybe you have resources that you can invest back into your community. So that's the way I look of London Real as a business now.
Sure.
It's not like me in the banking industry trying to get a bigger bonus. I'm building a movement that magnifies our message.
Right.
And once I switched that in my mindset, and maybe this will happen to you, then it was like, okay, every Life Accelerator program we sell or Business Accelerator program is a better camera. It means I can do a Facebook ad that means I'll change the lives of 10,000 more people. Mm-hmm. It means we can do a movie with Dorian Yates.
Right.
I couldn't afford that 18 months ago.
Right.
We had no cash flow.
Right.
So it's like we couldn't have actually done that. So does that make it a bad thing that I'm turning into a business? No, it makes it a good thing. So once I got into that rhythm, I was like, okay, now I can make a bigger impact when we actually step up, stop playing small, stop thinking like a charity, stop thinking like kumbaya, and say, okay, wait a second. Like, we know we have an important message as opposed to CNN or Fox. So, let's go for it.
And that's it. And I see the beauty of the podcast. Like we both were inspired by Rogan for sure. We were inspired by you. And the podcast format is this really unique format that we probably are still just scraping on the potential of its power and what it's going to become in the future. So I think that opportunity for us in Vancouver is highlighting like what's really happening there and what isn't being maybe talked about as much as it should be. Like what with real people, real conversations. I mean, the brand Real, Vancouver Real, London Real, it's so proper for that application. And you know, in Vancouver, especially and in Canada, there's a huge, and I'm sure you've been following the Dakota Access Pipeline issue and there's the whole indigenous movement stuff, and like there's literally just a re-indigenize, decolonize kind of movement happening, and it's, you know, that's very anti-mainstream or brand, you know, it's going to ruffle feathers and it's uncomfortable because it's kind of looking into the dark history, but you know, we're I think in a good position to at least help be a neutral platform for all parts to share on that. And that's part of our why of where we want to go with the show as well, is like bring a voice to these topics that are a little bit less seen on the mainstream TV. You know?
And that's super exciting. And I think, look, the realness, I think people are going to long form conversations, I think, but you know, you have to play the long game there, you know?
Yes.
And like, that's what you guys have been doing, that's what we've been doing, that's what Rogan did from the early get-go. I mean, people used to say, Brian, it's too long. And then after that, they said, Brian, is too short. So it's like you have to really be in for that.
Right.
And keeping it real, like we had a police officer in here the other night who shot 5 people in the line of duty and killed 3. Wow. And was accused of murder with one of them and then later acquitted. Right. Okay? Now, people might say you shouldn't have him on the show. But it's like, if we're London Real, we keep it real with all sorts of points of view. Right. Whereas, you know, if you're like, well, we're not mainstream, well, but yeah, you still, I think we still need to follow stories that might look conservative, but like, let's get him in here and listen to him. Right. Because I think if you spend 2 hours with a person, you will see the humanity in them. And you'll see why they do what they do. Now, you can still judge them for that, but you might understand them. And I think that's the beauty of what we're doing. Yeah,
and there's always something to learn. Yeah. There's always a story there, whether you can just learn from someone's mistakes, or you can learn from, you know, their triumphs and their victories in life, you know, their achievements. So, I mean, there's always something to learn. Everyone's got something. Everyone is here for a purpose, you know, and I believe that to the most fundamental level of my being is that everyone has something to bring to this whole totality. And so if we can bring some of those people that would never appear on a camera in, you know, CBC or something back in Canada there on radio, like that's different and that's unique. And I think people are interested in what's different and unique right now. And so the opportunity that we have with Vancouver Real is to bring that up. And then, you know, when we started the show, being podcasting from Float House on this street level studio, we you know, our big motivation behind that also is to promote flotation therapy and floating and Float House, which is our business there, because we believe this is something that can aid in this transformation of people as well. So there's like, we want to bring interesting stories out of the community, but we also want to impact people. We want to provide something of use, you know, and so having these conversations that we have about floating and meditation and personal development, introspection, those types of things, always get funneled in naturally just because we're inside the Float House, you know, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So it's something that we bring in. We don't try to make it too commercialized with it, but every podcast is brought to you by Float House because, and then we, you know, it often comes up in conversations, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I'm a big fan of the flotation tanks. Obviously, Rogan talked about it a lot early on. I went probably the first time like 6 or 7 years ago.
Right, I remember seeing the video.
Yeah, and then we went and did it here a couple times on the show as well.
Oh, okay, right.
And I'm a big fan, but you know, it's funny how when you get guys together and some girls as well and talk for long periods of time, it's funny how we drift to meditation, plant medicines, flotation, because I think we're getting in touch with humanity, and so we're getting in touch with ourselves. Like there's something about, like I call this the art of listening. Like we're talking, but what's really happening is people are learning how to listen for the first time in their lives. Right. And once they start listening to us, they start listening to themselves. There's a lot of parallels there. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. And first of all, congratulations to what you guys have done. 6 locations now?
6, yeah.
That's impressive because that's a tricky business. And I get guys in my business accelerator and they're like, I want to do a flotation place. And I'm like, okay, talk to Vancouver Real guys, because
Right.
that's and what it looks like to me, it's a hard business. And so
Super hard.
amazing you guys have done it, because you are doing something for humanity alongside, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a very challenging business, because I mean, in essence, we're trying to basically break it down, sell meditation, you know. Now,
Meditation for lazy people. That's what the guy in London called it.
it could be, yeah.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
the environment is extremely conducive for it, though. Like when you take away as much external stimuli as possible, your awareness has no other place really to go but within. When external reality is kind of reduced to a minimum, then the awareness has to go within. That's where it's going. So in Western culture, we don't have any traditional practices of going within. And so this is where I think that the tank is such an important tool for people who maybe haven't had that experience of going within, whether it's a plant meditation or an intense yoga class or a Kundalini class or a pranayama session or a Wim Hof even. Yeah. You know, the tank, you lie down, you relax, you breathe, and you wait, and you see what happens, and you start to feel your body, and you see your mind, and maybe your mind's going, and you can get a different perspective on it, and it can start to slow down. And that's where things kind of get interesting with the float tank practice, you know. And I do call it a practice. You know, it's not necessarily a guaranteed thing, because some people get in the first time and they lie down and it's effortless and they just sail off into the void. And other people, you know, come out after 20 minutes and just they can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that they can't do it, but something inside them was not able to let go. And so this is really the art of letting go. And that's, I think, a very valuable lesson in this day and age, knowing that on one level, everything is impermanent. And we have no choice but to let go and go with the flow. If you're trying to control too much and hold on and resist, you're going to probably cause suffering. And these are kind of like Buddhist like philosophies and stuff, but it's very applicable and it's very tangible when you're inside the float tank. And you get to experience it viscerally, personally. And that's why it's not just reading something like, oh, that sounds nice. But when you experience something, whether it's through plant medicine, deep facilitated meditation, that's where it really becomes a knowing, you know. And that's changing. That's where it changes on something inside. Something gets pinged, and you have a different understanding of yourself, of the world, of reality. And if you can remember that, you bring it into the world, you know, and then it grows and expands from there. So we're all about expanding awareness, expanding consciousness, whether it's through the show or through the float tank or just through the community meetups that we do. You know, like you do here, you said like sitting in this chair is therapy, and it is mind expanding, and you have to let go to it to be open to receive. And so it does come back to that being open and listening as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my first like flotation experience I had. It is work. Like you can't just think, you know, people think you're going to go in there and I have all these visions.
Right.
But like you really do have to put it into a practice. And I took my my girlfriend, the mother of my children. She hates it when I say that. But I took her to a flotation tank. I didn't even tell her we were going.
Okay.
We took a left-hand tank into there, and I threw her in the tank. And I came out after my session, and I was just like, ah. And I was like, how's yours? And she was like, fine. And then later she's like, I got out after 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's you do have to put the time in.
Yeah.
But I still remember I had this vision of myself in like a white suit as like the beacon of the community. And this is back when I was like a banker. And I remember having that vision of like, wow, I was actually doing great things. And it never made sense to me. But like 4 years later, I was like, wow, I started doing some good things. And so there were little seeds there that planted in my head that I wouldn't have gotten without it. So.
Well, and going back to your wife's experience, like it takes, you know, typically 2 to 3 shots at it. And we always say 2 to 3 within 4 to 6 weeks is kind of like, if you can fit that in and give that honest shot, you'll probably be able to let go and have that experience, you know. But some people, it takes a little bit more time, some people a little bit less. So it's, you know, but it's an opportunity, you know, and that's what we tell people, and that's what we try to explain to them. And we set them up for success. That whole process, you know, floating is not an easy business, like you were kind of alluding to. It's not, man. It's really challenging. And it's something that we have to do a ton of education on. And people need to learn why. Like, it got sensationalized with Rogan a little bit, you know? Like, people just thought, oh, I'm going to go in there and have a mushroom trip. No, you're not. I mean, it's possible, but probably not. And so, we've had to kind of reset that expectation a little bit and help work with people, especially after hosting tens of thousands, 100,000 floats. You got to see where the mainstream bulk of the population is actually at. And they're not going to go in there, for most of them, have that out-of-body transcendental experience right away, necessarily, or ever, potentially. But that's not what it's about. It's about reconnecting with what's in and seeing what's there, seeing what's going to come up for you, and being honest about that and feeling it. We get so cerebralized in our culture, and it's that reconnection with the body, reconnecting with the heart, that is gonna, I think, take us into just a whole different way of relating to ourselves, relating to other people, relating to our environment. So this is part of that process, and that's why it's worth it for us. It's not a huge moneymaker. It's just not yet. And I think it has the potential, but we work really hard. Just because we believe in what it is and what it represents. It represents hitting that pause button, instead of going and burning out and redlining. It's pause and make sure, are you doing what you want to do? Are you really sure this is what you want to do? Have you felt your body in the last week or year? And what's that like, So,
you said it was like the longest 18-inch journey from your head to your heart, and you're trying to help people make that journey.
That's been my experience, I didn't know what that was. I had an ex-girlfriend, and when we broke up, she was like, your heart's not open. I'm like, what do you mean? I love you. I love my mom. I love my dad. My heart's not open. Your heart's not open. I'm like, so that just started the inquiry for me. And so, I do lots of yoga, and we do these heart-opening postures. So we would do that heart-opening posture, and then I come back after, then I'd feel the sensation in my chest. And I'm trying to connect with that sensation that I feel in my chest. And I've been down to Spirit Quest Sanctuary, where Aubrey Marcus goes for ayahuasca retreats, and I've done down there 4 times now. Okay. And every time I go down, it's been like this unfolding slowly. I didn't even know really what I was looking for. I put up my intention, ask my question, and ayahuasca knows you better than you know yourself, and it'll be like, no, not quite. That's not the right direction. That's not the right direction. And it was guiding me. And then my 3rd time down there, this was after the breakup, and I'm exploring my heart, and I'm like, okay, help me connect with my heart. And this first ceremony, it just, for whatever reason, it was the scariest thing ever. It's the scariest thing I had to do, was this surrendering act to Mother Ayahuasca, to the medicine. And from that, just this, it's really indescribable, this heart-opening experience where I felt connected with the universe, and that universe was a universe of love. And I'm like, that's what I truly am. And in fact, my intention, my exact wording of my intention is like, help me find my highest purpose. And I'm thinking, it's going to tell me about my vocation, like what I should be doing with my life, give me some direction. And it showed me that my highest purpose for me was to connect to what I really am. And that was the heart. And that's what it did. And it was just the most profound experience I've ever had. And it literally felt like when it opened and I feel this love, I was someone dying of thirst, and I got that water line. I was like, just sucking it up. It literally felt like that. So I must have been disconnected. My heart must have been closed to some degree. And then when it opened and I felt that, it was just, I think that experience is so cathartic on multiple levels of our being. I think physically, I think mentally, emotionally, it just penetrated my whole being. And I think that's, I want people to have that experience, because whether it's through that way or another modality, it doesn't matter. But I just feel like that, something about that was very healing for me, and I think it can heal a lot of people if they feel disconnected or if they're having these repeated patterns in their lives and their relationships,
Yeah. You look at North America or Western world or the whole world. We're all just, and I think it's getting worse. It's just the your mobile phones and the media and all those things, to where, like you said, we're trying to redline all the time, and we're just disconnected, and you can see it in people's behaviors, and makes people anxious and all of this stuff. And this whole idea of just to slow it down, to reconnect. You are doing the work, the important work by even getting people to listen to you, to float, all of those things. But it's so important, you know, even getting people to stop and listen to a conversation, to listen to themselves. And the people that get it really get it. And the people that don't are kind of like we used to be, right? Where we were like, no, I got it, I'm good. And then when you start connecting, you realize, okay, I wasn't good.
So I look back to my early university days and playing football. I was a good student. Worked really hard in school, got good grades. You know, I was part of my ego. You know, I had to get good grades. I was a quarterback, so I was, you know, one of the leaders of the team, and got recruited out of high school. So, and this is all I was focused on. You know, I didn't even know there is a meditative aspect. And ironically, a big part of my university career was probably hindered just because I didn't have any mental training. You know, those psychological skills to like calm down before the game. Like a quarterback does not need to be, you know, on red line. Not like a linebacker, let's say. He needs to be calm, cool, collected, see the whole in the flow state, see the field. You know, and I didn't have that. I get so worked up, so anxious, so tight, and it would just hinder my performance. You know, so I wish I had that. But you know, when you look back on the journey, you can see those pivot points of those little things that you learned or those people that you met along the way that shifted your trajectory one way or the other. You know, it was a valuable learning lesson for me back then. You know?
Talk to me about the big moments for Vancouver Real. I'll tell you my big moment, and this is crazy, I might have mentioned this to you guys before one time, but I was at Dan Peña's castle, right, up at Scotland with a $50 billion man, and it must have been like end of October, early November 2014, and I was listening to your episode with Dr. Gabor Mate.
I remember that.
And I was like, damn, these guys are killing it. And it was just crazy and weird and surreal that I would be listening to Vancouver Real in that situation. When, you know, Dan's being Dan and everything like that. But I was really impressed. And then I think just shortly after that, Adam Scorgi came to town and we saw the Culture High, and Gabor Mate was in that, along with like 5 other London Real guests. And it was just, you know, I know it was a big episode for you guys. I think he's here in May, so we're super excited to have him on.
Are you getting him here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge.
It's finally here. And so that's great. But you know, was that a big moment for you guys? And do you have like 1 or 2 other moments where you're like, okay, this is important for the show or important for me?
Yeah, Gabor was huge. He was like one of those guys on the list from day one, like who we wanted to get. And we nailed him pretty early, episode 18, we got him. And our goal that whole time was just like, get him talking as long as possible. And we almost had him for 2 hours, which was really cool. But
yeah, it was good and a great episode. He talks so well.
I
could just listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, if people here haven't heard of Dr. Gabor Mate, just, you know, after this episode, go and search him on YouTube, find him on the different podcasts, because he's got really important messages to say.
Very educated take on the science of addiction and the reality of it,
and real life. You know,
life.
He's been down in the trenches. In fact, our studio and our float center is about a block and a half away from like Skid Row, basically in Vancouver, which is one of the worst populations for addicts in North America.
Heroin.
Heroin.
Okay.
And meth. And
in North America.
In North America, it's really bad.
Why is that?
Oh, that's a big story. You know, that's like the indigenous population. It's the end of the road in Canada, so everyone kind of moves west, and it's the climate's more mild in Vancouver, so people who are kind of transient end up down there. And you know, there's been this. Well, back in the day too, they closed down all these social housings, these social supports, and so all those people were on the street, and they kind of just, you know, they had a generation of children, and the cycle repeats itself, you know, so it's pretty heavy down there. But it's, so Gabor has been working down there. He used to work right down in the trenches there, basically. And so he got a lot of his stuff from research for sure, but the experience and, you know, highlighting that nobody that he worked with who had an addiction didn't have child abuse. You know, so with the whole war on drugs, we're punishing people for taking an illegal substance, but really they're taking that illegal substance because they got abused as a child. And so we're punishing them. It's just backwards. And he goes very articulately into that whole conversation really well. And it's like, it's so backwards the way we treat people who are addicts, you know, when they were children who were abused, period. And that's their story. And they take the substance they're taking to not feel the pain.
To hide the pain. Yeah.
So it's his like he speaks so much truth, and now he works a lot with ayahuasca. He hosts retreats down in Mexico and does the integrative work, and it's really cool stuff that he's doing.
I'm looking forward to talking to him.
We're going to have his daughter-in-law, Tanya Mate, on our show next month as well.
Okay,
so
cool.
She's in the same line of work.
Pick 2 other big moments in the 100 episodes.
Yeah.
This is your life.
One was Philip McKernan.
Oh yeah, of course.
The first time he was on, he really stole the show for us. It was awesome. Like he can just go, and his message is so clear and authentic. So we had him on in we did the big Vancouver Real speaker series.
Yeah.
Which you did that pre-video for us.
Yeah, of course.
And
and that was your first event, right?
Yes, that was our first big event, and we had 100 plus 150 people out to that.
That's huge.
And then Philip just did his thing. You know, it was so awesome. He just does what he does best, working with people there. And he did this like I don't know how he does. He goes in that state and just starts working with people on the fly.
And so you haven't seen that before.
No.
It's pretty crazy to see, right?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's when he's really in his element.
Yeah.
Not that he's bad at talking either,
right.
but when you see him do it, he's very sensitive.
Totally.
He feels people.
Yeah. And then a personal highlight, like sometimes Andy and I will do solo episodes. So I'll do solo host and he does a solo host. So one of my favorite ones was with Dr. Dan Engel. He works down with On It, and he's closely related with Aubrey, and does a lot of plant medicine work, and he's a psychiatrist. So I've been following him along, and I've been messaging him back and forth, and so when I finally was able to nail that, we did a Skype one, which is, this is all we could get done, but I was just licking my chops for that one because I knew I was going to have a really fun conversation with him. So he was probably one of my personal favorites as well.
Yeah, we all have that show where you get off and you're just like electrified.
Yeah.
It usually comes from some anxiety beforehand.
Right.
You're not sure if you're prepared. It's a big guest.
Right.
But then if you can pull it off, and if you can pull it off well,
yeah.
it's not many better feelings.
No, totally. And that one, I find the ones that I try to prepare more for, kind of it stumbles me up a little bit. So just do a little bit and then just be there with them. Like you're saying, listen. And the questions come up naturally when you're with them, and as you dig into their story, I find those ones, that's more my style with it,
Yeah, I've gone both ways.
Right.
I've over-prepared sometimes where it's just way too much, and I go back and forth. I'm always experimenting because I'm always very critical of myself.
Right.
So I'm always but yeah, you can definitely over-prepare.
Totally.
And then the problem with that is that you know all the answers to the questions,
right.
and then you don't want to ask them anymore.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your viewers are like, I did not know about that, and you're
right.
like, oh well, I read 3 articles on it.
Right.
So you have to be careful, and then you always have to be present, which is easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
But you really have to be there and seeing what they're feeling like, what they want to talk about.
Totally.
So it's an art that will probably take 40 years to.
Yeah, well, I mean, and looking back from I remember watching your first episode, man, on London Real and with Nick, and I remember just thinking oh, these guys are trying to do the Rogan thing, look what they're doing. I'm like, who is this guy, and it was what it was, right? I mean, but seeing from there, and I mean, you become a very skilled interviewer, from what I've seen. I'm not blowing smoke, but I'm just saying, it's the evolution's been very clear. And because of that, Andy and I have been working on articulating clearer and forming thoughts and what you want to say, in a more cohesive manner, and not getting stumbled up and rushing words out, things like that nature. So we've been trying to keep up with you a little bit.
Okay, good. You always have to be watching the best.
Mm-hmm.
I watch everybody. I watch 60 Minutes. I watch
right.
Ariel Helwani of MMA Fighting and
right.
see how he interviews people. I constantly seeing who's got interesting techniques,
right.
what they do, how they stay composed, because I'm always trying to get better. And it's really tricky. And what we do is, you could argue, even trickier, because there's no editing.
Right.
You don't know the state someone's in when they get there. There's a lot of weird things happening behind the scenes, and then you got to try to get it out in this beautifully designed orchestra.
Right.
So when it goes well, it's great.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, people are not sure why.
Totally. And that's why I like Andy and I, when we're the co-hosts, when we're doing it at the same time, because we both bring a little different angle to it. Literally and physically, or metaphorically, we just have different questions, obviously, and different views on things. So it's nice to have that ping pong going on. And I think Rupert Sheldrake and McKenna, and I forget the third one. They're talking about the trialogue, right?
Yeah.
And so we get that all the time. And the
Yeah.
trialogue it does flow really, really well. But doing the one-on-one, when I've done those, it's totally a different feel, you know?
Yeah, it's different, you know.
yeah.
I mean, I bagged the trialogue a while ago, and then I bagged it for Silicon Real a while ago, and I think there was a point where I had Timothy Sheaf on with Bruce Perry, and they're both really interesting guys, but like Bruce Perry was the guest, and it was just, and everyone was like, I wanted to hear from that guy, not the other guy, and it got to be a point where I was like, you know what? I've got people on now that have like written books, given 5 TED Talks, starred in movies, won gold medals. It's like I got people on that have stories, and I felt like it's got to be all about them.
Yeah, and I guess when you had you and Nick doing it, it was kind of similar because there's like 2 hosts that were regular hosts, but then when he left and you started bringing in guest hosts, well then you have a cool guest host that can, like you're saying, can be part of the conversation, but he has his own story as well, so
yeah, I
mean, a little different.
I think it's a different vibe and stuff, but I'm kind of glad we did this.
Totally.
The other thing, like, little things like people listening to us won't see this, but my chair is directly facing you.
Yes.
And a lot of people have like, why don't you point the chair toward the camera? And if you look at, not that I'm calling out Marie Forleo, but like she'll have guests and they're looking at the camera and the chairs are angled toward each other.
Right.
And for me, I was like, no. Well, first of all, it's because we're going to do it our way here at London Real. And I always say, one thing about guests I always say is that if I don't enjoy my conversation with my guest, then I might as well go back to banking. So I don't ever want to sit across someone that I don't want to be in that chair.
Right.
And like that's like the unwritten rule around here.
Cool.
So like I never have to worry about like, I don't know, having someone in here just because they blah, blah, blah. Because for me, it's just not worth me going to that low. So like that's already one thing. But you know, I'm like, we're having a conversation. I look at you, I'm getting into your head, we're gonna do it this way, and the cameras can kind of figure it out.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that we're definitely gonna have to have the discussion back on our show is like reformatting, because we do like a table, kind of like a radio style. It's okay, it's cool, but there's something we're gonna think about this. You know, how can we maybe adapt a more kind of formal, intimate, like this is very intimate, you know, like there's stuff going on here, but it's not even there in the conversation, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there's something to that we're going to explore too.
I'm still playing with it. Honestly, sometimes when we move to our new studios, I'm thinking about having almost like a Rogan style where you're at these desks and you can kind of hang out like a casual thing, just to maybe switch it up, because like honestly the chairs change the conversation. Sure. And these are like really low, relaxed chairs, and it makes you want to think like, let me tell you about my mother. And so and sometimes I can get gems. Like I can get Nigel Benn to cry and like really tell us about him finding God and how it changed his life and stopped him from being the nasty womanizer, drug-taking fool. Crazy. And like that happened after 2.5 hours. And that was a beautiful moment, and like I had to put my hand on his knee, and it was just like the essence of what we do here. But sometimes I feel like I'd like to have another option for the format.
Sure.
So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Episode 200, where maybe if you do one a week, that's about 2 years from now. Say you come here for that.
Okay.
What does Vancouver Real look like episode 200? Like this is real talk here.
Yeah.
What does it look like? What are you doing? What's a week in your life or a month in your life of Vancouver Real entity?
I'm looking at having a lot of support to be creating what the potential of Vancouver Real could be. And I think that's going to be different forms of the show, some geared toward more thematics of like helping people with certain issues in their lives, and then more of like the interview style show, you know, so one-on-one going after this story or this individual in one sense or form, but then having more of like the content show that can help, you know, the usability. Like how can someone take that information and apply it directly into their lives? So like I want to see that more structured, more thematic, and bringing that into the show. Bigger and bigger. I want people to come, when they come to Vancouver, like anyone from out of town, big name or whatever, they're like, I got to go on that show, because that's going to reach the people who are doing stuff in our city. That's going to reach the people who are actually, you know, forming the future of this city and of this part of the country. You know what I mean? That's where I want Vancouver Real to represent, is those people who are, you know, in that late millennial generation, you know, and we're just coming into our stride now, and knowing that powers that be will be falling away, and there's going to be lots of roles to step into. And so we want to be a show to be on the front lines of those people stepping into these real big decision-making positions on all levels of our society, because we know we got changes to make. We know that the environment is a huge concern, and we know that people need help in different ways that aren't getting help, and there's archaic models in place that are preventing them from getting help. So we want to be a part of that force, of that wave of like turning the tide for humanity. And that, if that's in Vancouver, great. If it's beyond, amazing. So that's where I see it going.
Good, you can do that. But it will take a lot of risk, and you'll have to go to where the fear is, as I quote my own TED Talk. But like, it's one thing I learned from Dan Pena when I was listening to Gabor Mate on Vancouver Real, was that I had to go do the things I was uncomfortable doing, which for me, honestly, was hiring someone here. Because, here I got an entity that not only isn't making money, it's losing money. At the same time, I'm living in London with a family, which is also a money-losing venture, and probably always will be. And then I'm like, okay, I got to hire someone, and I got to invest in the business. So for me, that was always a stumbling block for me. And putting myself out there. To be honest, that TED Talk was big for other reasons. To be honest, I don't know if I've ever talked about this. It showed my team, or my potential team, who I was, and that I was ready to step up. And like you talked about me, and I think you made a really good observation about me that no one's really said before, is that I was shy about coming outside of the I'm the host, to where I could be like, okay, I'm the guy. I can talk about me too. And I think with that TED Talk, I structured the vision of what I wanted us to be, and what I was there for, and what I learned, and it sent out a message that, okay, Brian's getting serious about this. And so, and from there, it was more risks. It was like, all right, hire someone, start an academy. What's that all about? How can we do that? We're not ready. We don't have the software. Do it anyways. And so start before you're ready is like been the theme all along here. And so I would just say that I'm guessing you're going to have to do certain things to do that, which means hire people when it doesn't even seem obvious that you can afford them, because there's only so much you and Andy can do, even though you got amazing people like Candace White helping you and all those other things. And we had people helping us too, but like you got to invest in those people. And then you got to, like I said, start an academy when it might be like, I don't know if I want to charge money for this kind of thing. But what I've found is when we started the academy, when people invest in a product, that's when they actually invest in themselves. So I remember the only reason I started meditating is because I paid a transcendental meditation guy some stupid money, like $1,000. So when I did that, I was like, I'm showing up for the classes, and I'm not going to quit for a month. And it made me do it. And so I found that, funny enough, when you charge people for these, like our Life Accelerator courses or our Business Accelerator courses, those are the people that invest more. So it's this weird kind of dichotomy of, okay, that's how you actually get people that change their lives more. So just saying for you, things like that, it's easy to say, I want to feature stories about real people in the community, but you got to do it. And then like for us, making this Dorian Yates feature film was like huge risk. We didn't know what the heck was going to happen. We took a crew down there, like 5 of us. It was the craziest 4 days ever. And we came back, and we literally, with Luis, our head of video here, who's a genius, we put it together and then tore it apart and put it together and tore it apart. And we came up with something that we're pretty happy with. And now it's a movie. But like, I never thought that would have happened a while ago. And we've got a whole nother set of about 10 big risks we're taking this year. So I would just say for you guys, if you can embrace that and not be afraid to screw something up or look bad or have to apologize, that's probably how you're going to get to where you're going to get.
Yeah, jump into that fire, right? That's where the transformation is going to happen. So
and question your assumptions on everything. And why do I assume that? Because there's no reason Vancouver Real can't be highly relevant in the city, and then in Canada, and then in America, and then in the world. No reason. Because you're coming with this ethos, and now you have a track record. That's no joke. 100 episodes is no joke, all right? So you guys need to give yourself props, because let's be honest, there's been a lot of reels started around the world, and there's been some amazing ones. You guys are the only one that's still going from, I think, back in the day. I think on my TED Talk, I had Dublin Reel up there and LA Reel up there and a couple others I don't remember. They realize it's hard work. And like most people don't, even to do 5 episodes is hard work, or 10. It's crazy, it's relentless, it's thankless. Sometimes you get guests that come back and say, would you take my episode down or stop tweeting about me? And you're like, what? I just like ripped my heart out. Like your brother's laughing over there. Like honestly, sometimes you get kicked in the teeth you know, for doing someone you think is a favor, and like that's just part of the business.
It's true,
and you got to just take it, and because you have all this glory that you get on top of it. So every now and then you get like whacked in the head, and you're like, wait a second, I was just trying to do something good in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you got punished for it. Yeah. But the real players get up the next day and, well, what's your higher why? I'm doing this for a greater world. Yeah. And if you believe in that, and I know you guys do, then you keep going. So
no, and that's it, you know, like, and I think it's just looking at what we have going right now, and then getting really clear on what our strengths are, what can we offer, you know, and bringing that together. I think doing the entrepreneurial venture that we've done is very, I mean, the experiences we've learned from that, you know, is very valuable. Like, I can't even tell you, like, I got my bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree, but like that education that I got through doing that venture, it's not even close. You know what I mean? So I think if that can be of service to people, if the experiences I've gone through in terms of my personal transformation can be inspiring or informative to people, and we can work together on these different things. You know, I want to see, I want to bring meditation into it as well. You know, I want to bring in the actual primary experience of shamanic work. You know, using drums and sound and stuff like that to give people these experiences that can be very shifting. So I think there's a part of it there where bringing it, the primary experience, can be done as well.
Yeah. And honestly, you're doing a disservice to your community by like not giving them the tools to go further. And like, I remember I realized that right before we started the academy. I was like, okay, guys stopped me on the street. Man, I love that video. It was awesome. I learned so much from Dorian Yates. I learned so much from this person. I'd be like, okay, what'd you do? I watched another video. I did this, I did that. And I was just like, I felt like we were doing a disservice to people because we brought them all the way there, and then I gave them what's next. Right. We didn't have meetups. We didn't have an academy. We didn't have a place where they could get to get in touch with each other. Totally. So I hope you guys feel the same way, as in that, like, not only should you, it's your responsibility to like give people things they can put their teeth into, and give a way they can invest in Vancouver Real, because you know, the power is this movement you guys are doing.
And the power is in the numbers too. You know, like when people are working together and supporting each other, that's synergy, right? That's 1 + 1 is 3. So that's where it's huge to like let be a facility, because if people are all on board, then they need, let's do it. Let's come together. And it's okay to have humble beginnings. It's all humble beginnings, always, right? And so it will grow. If you put energy to anything, it will grow.
Yeah,
you know?
It will grow, but obviously it has to be intelligently directed energy.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would still be here. I would still be doing the old show. Right. I might not have changed, and I just feel like I would have been doing everyone a disservice, including me. So, that's my only thoughts to you guys.
Okay, no, well taken. I can't wait to go back and watch this.
Right?
Yeah.
You guys flew here for this huge like honor from me, you know, and when I heard you guys were doing that, I was like, what? Because that's a big deal, you know. And you guys came over. I'm super excited, you know, to do your 100th episode here, and I'm just amazed what you guys are doing. Whenever everyone asks me about that thing I said on Rogan or my TED Talk, it's like you guys come up, you know, because you guys have just done this huge bulk of episodes, and like I said, you guys really bring it. You're constantly thinking about it. You're doing live events. Look, there's no joke about live events. They're very hard to do. To get more than 100 people in a room, it's harder than people think, you know, to do all that stuff, you know, and yet it's so important for your brand. So I'm just super impressed with what you guys are doing. Oh man,
thank you so much. Like we wanted to come out here to interview you just for our show, just make it happen, and you kind of spun it on us, like, well, why don't you come on our show and do the Real Talk and the episode with Andy? Like it was very humbling, and just sitting here right now, looking at your face.
Am I better looking in person or not?
You're very handsome.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're very strapping. Good complexion.
Am I shorter or taller than you thought I was?
No, you're actually a little bit taller.
Really?
Then I thought, because he's like, you know, he's not the tallest guy. I'm like, yeah, I know, but when I saw you just now, I was like, no, he's taller than I thought.
Maybe it's the suit. You know?
I don't know, the pinstripes.
Yeah, well, you know, technically you're on London Real, but I got a funny feeling your brother is going to be breaking me down a little bit more tomorrow, so it's all good.
Yes, you know? No, he's a whole different ball of wax. So enjoy that one.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, this one's a little faster, so there you go. To anybody listening, if they haven't got the message, they got to check out Vancouver Real. Listen to it, watch it. You guys have been in video from the beginning, which I'm telling you, it's the smartest thing you ever did, smartest thing we ever did. Because the future, as we know, is video.
Totally.
And let's talk to the team the next day or so, and we can break down what we're doing with our video.
Awesome.
Because the fact that you guys have that asset takes you, you're above 99% of the people out there.
Yeah,
so.
no, it's huge. Well, part of our biggest reach is when we do these highlight clips of an episode on Facebook video.
Yeah.
Just goes.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and we're experimenting with stuff. This is obviously on live right now on Facebook, so mess with that stuff too.
Yeah, so we will.
And I need to give you guys a visit to Vancouver.
Oh, man.
And when I do, I hope I can come on your show.
We will roll out the green carpet.
Okay. And I can get some flotation going on.
Oh, totally.
I want to do like a 2-hour session. I haven't done that before.
Dude, we'll do 3.5.
Okay.
That's a double float.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done.
Extra level of surrendering. You just let go.
I love it, man. I haven't been in a while. I need to go.
All right,
cool,
brother.
man. All right, give me a hug.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Thanks much. Okay, cool.
The critics who always speak behind my back, maybe I want to hear them remind me, he's back, the great pretender. I hope this time he gets hurt. I love these guys. They give me fuel. If you want to reach your objective, you want to achieve it, you're going to have to be obsessive. You're going to have to be obsessed. Feel what you do. Feel it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't matter.
It's Chris Eubank Jr. How do you explain his prowess in the ring?
Junior has that obsession, that genius, that magic. Genius is obsession, but it's in one area.
You studied the sweet science for so much of your life. How do you walk away from it? Do you miss it?
You can't walk away from it. I am it. And even when I dance, really I'm boxing. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, the one who strives valiantly.
What was the worst day of your life, and how has it shaped you as a human being?
When I fought Nigel Benn, I stood like this. It was to mask this. The risk must be taken. That's why you are London Reelers. That's why we're here. We're tired of sitting still, watching it happening for others. Let's do it.